Take a quiet moment right now to slow yourself down and breathe gently. Let the noise inside your mind fade for a little while, and softly bring your attention to what you have truly been feeling underneath everything else. You may have noticed something recently that is not easy to explain with ordinary words. At unexpected moments, a pressure seems to settle in your chest for no clear reason. Out of nowhere, thoughts of one specific person return to your mind. There is also a strange restless feeling, almost like a quiet current moving beneath the surface of your normal day. It may seem confusing, but it does not always feel random. It feels as though something is trying to get your attention. Your deeper awareness often notices changes before your logical mind catches up. Long before conversations happen or messages arrive, your inner self can sense small emotional shifts that are impossible to see with your eyes. That is why you may feel that something is changing between you and this person even though nothing obvious has happened yet. That gentle pull inside your heart, the one you keep dismissing as imagination or wishful thinking, may actually be reminding you that this connection still has unfinished chapters waiting to unfold. If you have been feeling this unexpected pull towards someone lately, or noticed that strange pressure in your chest, press the like button right now. You may be surprised by how many others are experiencing something very similar. Stay with me until the end, because what comes next could explain feelings you have been unable to put into words. These moments often arrive before life takes an unexpected turn. Right before an important shift becomes visible in the outside world, something begins moving quietly inside. It feels like silent tension building beneath the surface, difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. That is exactly where you may be standing today. Tiny openings are appearing where there once seemed to be complete silence. Doors that looked permanently closed are beginning to loosen. Paths that never seemed possible are slowly revealing themselves one step at a time. Your place in this person's heart may not have disappeared the way you feared it had. While you were living with questions and trying to understand the distance between you, something else was quietly happening within them. The emotional walls they built over time, walls created by fear, pride, uncertainty, and the need to stay in control, have not remained as strong as they once were. Little by little, those defenses have started to weaken. The powerful feeling you have been sensing recently could be connected to emotions they have been trying to keep hidden for a long time. Some truths eventually become too heavy to ignore. Whether they feel fully prepared or not, those emotions continue rising toward the surface. Some connections seem to leave lasting marks that time alone cannot erase. Distance changes many things, but it does not always erase what people genuinely felt. To understand why everything feels different now, it helps to think about what may have been happening during the silence between you. While there were no conversations, there may still have been quiet reflection. They kept moving forward with their own life, while occasionally looking back in ways no one else could see. They found themselves caught between familiar fears and a connection they tried hard to convince themselves no longer mattered. Even while creating distance, part of them may have continued wondering about you. If you have felt their presence lately despite having no contact at all, leave the word pull in the comments below. Many people describe this exact feeling before unexpected changes begin to unfold. Keep watching, because the next part may connect pieces that have felt confusing until now. Sometimes the silence itself tells a story that words never could. During the time apart, they filled their schedule with work, responsibilities, conversations, and daily routines that appeared completely normal from the outside. Friends probably believed everything was fine. Family may have noticed nothing unusual. Even they tried convincing themselves that staying busy would eventually quiet everything they had been avoiding. Yet every distraction had limits. In quiet moments, memories returned without invitation. A familiar place, a meaningful song, a random conversation, or a simple everyday object suddenly brought your image back into their thoughts. Those memories did not arrive because they wanted them to. They appeared because emotions pushed beneath the surface rarely disappear simply because they are ignored. People often believe distance automatically removes deep feelings, but the heart rarely follows the same rules as logic. The more they focused on avoiding uncomfortable emotions, the more those emotions quietly waited for another opportunity to be noticed. Slowly they began realizing that running from their feelings did not actually free them from them. It only delayed facing them. That realization can be deeply uncomfortable because it forces someone to admit what they have spent so much energy denying. Stay with me because the next part explains why these realizations often happen when people least expect them. This is where many stories begin changing direction. What once looked like complete certainty slowly becomes uncertainty. What once felt impossible suddenly feels worth exploring again. Change rarely announces itself loudly. It usually begins with one quiet thought that refuses to disappear. As these emotions continued growing stronger, something else quietly started changing inside them. Instead of constantly focusing on why they stayed away, they slowly began asking themselves different questions. They wondered what life might have looked like if fear had not been making so many decisions. They questioned whether pride had protected them or simply kept them lonely. They replayed conversations, remembered small moments, and noticed details they once ignored. Sometimes people only understand the value of a connection after enough time has passed for them to experience life without it. That understanding does not always arrive all at once. It builds slowly through ordinary days, until one moment everything suddenly feels different. This is why you may have been sensing unusual emotional energy recently, even though nothing visible has happened yet. Inner changes often happen long before outward actions follow. The heart usually moves first. Decisions come later. If this message is speaking directly to what you have been experiencing, make sure you stay until the very end, because there is one final insight that many people overlook. Sometimes the biggest transformations begin in complete silence, long before anyone says a single word. What matters now is not forcing an outcome or chasing answers. It is remaining open to what naturally unfolds while continuing to build your own peace, your own confidence, and your own life. Whatever happens next, you are becoming stronger through every step of this journey, and that quiet strength changes far more than you may realize today. They appeared calm, confident, and completely in control, almost like someone who had accepted everything and stepped into a brand new chapter without looking back. From the outside, it seemed as though they had found peace and settled comfortably into a different routine. But what people saw was only the surface. Beneath that calm expression was a quiet mask they wore every single day, not only for others but also for themselves. It helped them believe that creating distance had been the right decision, even when a deeper part of them quietly questioned it. As the weeks and months passed, carrying that mask became harder than they ever expected. Underneath it, an invisible struggle continued to grow. No one around them noticed it. During quiet evenings and long nights, they wrestled with emotions they could not easily explain. Their mind kept offering logical reasons for staying away. It told them distance was safer. It insisted that keeping control would protect them from disappointment. Part of that came from pride. Part came from fear. Another part came from simply not knowing how to manage feelings that felt much bigger than anything they had experienced before. More people go through this than most ever realize. Sometimes someone walks away, not because they feel nothing, but because they feel far too much. Being deeply understood by another person can feel overwhelming. It can awaken fears of losing control or repeating old pain. Stay with me because what happens next explains why certain connections refuse to disappear, even after long periods of silence. The answer may surprise you more than you expect. As time quietly continued moving forward, those protective walls they spent so much energy building slowly began to crack. The defenses that once felt strong no longer gave them the same comfort. Little by little, they noticed something difficult to ignore. Life without you no longer felt complete. Everything looked normal on the outside, yet something meaningful seemed missing beneath the surface. They could not fully explain it or replace it with anything else. A new awareness gradually started growing inside them. They realized that the guarded version of themselves they had been presenting to the world was never their complete self. It was simply a role they had learned to play for protection, and that role was becoming exhausting to maintain. Every attempt they made to create more emotional distance somehow led them back to thoughts of you. It was more than ordinary missing. It reached much deeper than simple memories. It touched the quiet parts of their identity that rarely come into view. Without expecting it, they found themselves standing at a personal turning point. They tried filling their schedule with work, responsibilities, social gatherings, entertainment, and endless distractions. For a while it looked successful, but the quiet moments always returned. Comparisons appeared without warning. Conversations with other people felt incomplete. Thoughts they never intended to revisit quietly found their way back to you. Keep watching, because this is where everything slowly begins changing direction. The next part explains why distractions eventually lose their power. Everything that had been building beneath the surface slowly reached a place where it could no longer stay hidden. Something inside them started shifting in a way they could no longer avoid. The old methods that once helped them escape uncomfortable emotions suddenly stopped working. A person can only avoid what they truly feel for so long before emotional exhaustion quietly takes over. That is the place they may have reached now. The life they carefully built to keep difficult feelings at a distance no longer provides the same emotional numbness it once did. They believed that enough time apart would weaken the connection. They convinced themselves that silence would slowly erase what they felt. They hoped distance would gradually remove your presence from their emotional world. Yet something completely unexpected happened instead. Time did not reduce the connection, it made it clearer. The longer the separation lasted, the more often you appeared in their thoughts. They noticed reminders of you in ordinary moments they never expected. During quiet evenings before falling asleep, while driving familiar roads, during conversations that somehow felt empty even when surrounded by people. If your intuition has been telling you lately that something is changing inside them, write yes in the comments below. Many people describe sensing this quiet shift long before anything becomes visible. Stay until the end, because the final piece often explains the part no one talks about. Even in crowded places filled with conversation, movement, and constant activity, they still experienced moments of unexpected loneliness. Noise surrounded them, yet something inside remained silent. Again and again, their attention drifted back toward you without any effort. That was when a much deeper understanding quietly began taking root. They slowly realized that what existed between you was never an ordinary connection, or a temporary emotional high. It reached places within them that few people, if anyone, had ever touched before. Once they accepted that truth, everything around them started looking different. It became impossible to treat the connection as though it had never mattered. The mind still searched for practical explanations, but the heart spoke with a steady voice that logic could no longer silence. There were quiet nights when they sat alone, remembering conversations you may have forgotten long ago. Small moments that once seemed ordinary now carried surprising meaning inside their memory. The kindness you showed during difficult times, the way you listened without rushing to judge, the simple look you gave them when words were not needed. Those memories stayed alive far longer than they expected. Sometimes the moments we believe were small become the ones another person remembers most. And that is why certain connections continue, leaving quiet echoes long after the conversation has ended. If this message feels strangely familiar, keep listening, because sometimes the biggest changes begin inside someone's heart, long before they find the courage to show them in the outside world. There was something about the peace your presence naturally brought that they could never fully explain. You never had to work hard to make them feel comfortable. Around you they could simply exist without pretending to be someone else. That kind of emotional comfort is incredibly rare, and once it is experienced, it becomes difficult to replace. The empty space left behind by that connection is not something that can easily be filled with new people, busy schedules, or temporary distractions. They have tried all of those things, yet none of them created the same feeling. In fact, every attempt to replace what they shared with you only made the difference more obvious. At first, their pride convinced them they could move forward without looking back. They believed they were stronger than their emotions, and that time would quietly erase everything. But pride can only carry someone so far before reality begins speaking louder than denial. That moment has slowly arrived for them. They are beginning to see this connection from a completely different perspective. It no longer feels like something they can simply switch off whenever they choose. Deep inside, they are starting to understand that meeting you changed something permanent within them. Some people enter our lives for a season, while others quietly reshape the way we see ourselves forever. Stay with me, because what happens next may explain why everything suddenly feels different after so much silence. The final pieces are beginning to fall into place, and the picture is becoming much clearer than it has ever been before. While these quiet changes have been unfolding inside them, another transformation has also been happening within you. Even if thoughts of this person still appear from time to time, you are no longer standing in the same emotional place where you once were. Life has gently strengthened you. The uncertainty that once consumed your days no longer controls every emotion. You learned what it feels like to keep reaching towards someone who could not meet you with the same consistency. You experienced the exhaustion of carrying most of the emotional effort alone. Through every unanswered question and every long period of silence, you slowly began bringing your attention back to yourself. That shift may seem small on the surface, but it carries enormous meaning. The moment you stopped stretching yourself beyond your limits and stopped believing that giving more would finally change everything, the energy between you quietly transformed. There was once a time when your emotional world revolved around their actions. Your mood depended on their messages, their attention, or whether they acknowledged your presence. But little by little something changed inside you. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally remembered that your own peace deserved the same care you had been giving everyone else. Keep watching, because this next part explains why that inner change often creates the biggest turning point of all. When your attention gently returned to your own life, everything around the connection began shifting in ways you may not have noticed immediately. You started investing your energy into your own healing, your own growth, and your own sense of calm. That decision quietly created an entirely different emotional atmosphere. When someone constantly pours their focus outward, their presence can slowly become something others expect without appreciating. But when that same energy becomes balanced and centered, its absence suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. That is exactly what they may be experiencing now. They are noticing your distance in a completely different way, because your energy no longer carries the same urgency or constant need for reassurance. Instead of making the connection weaker, your quiet confidence has gently pushed them toward facing feelings they avoided for far too long. If you believe they are finally beginning to understand what they lost when they walked away, write "awakening" in the comments below. Many people discover that the greatest changes begin only after they stop chasing and start choosing themselves instead. Stay until the end, because the final insight often changes the way people understand this entire journey. Sometimes the strongest message is spoken through peaceful silence rather than endless effort. As this shift continues unfolding, the emotional pressure you have carried for so long will slowly begin changing into something much clearer. The resistance that once filled every thought is beginning to fade, because honesty is finally replacing avoidance. They are reaching a place where ignoring the connection no longer feels possible. One by one, the old defenses that once seemed necessary are losing their strength. They are beginning to understand that the security they searched for was never created by distance. It was quietly present in the genuine connection you shared all along. That realization is slowly breaking the cycle they have repeated for so long. The confusion that once clouded their judgment is clearing, allowing them to look at both their choices and their emotions with a level of honesty they were not ready for before. None of this happened because you forced it. It happened because you stepped back, respected yourself, and allowed life to unfold naturally. You are entering a season where your patience and personal growth are becoming visible in ways you never expected. The calm energy you reclaimed is creating space instead of pressure. You are no longer trying to convince anyone of your value. You are simply living it, and that quiet confidence often becomes far more powerful than endless words. Do not be surprised if signs of change begin appearing in unexpected ways. It could arrive through a simple message, an unexpected meeting, or even a quiet feeling of peace replacing the tension you carried for so long. Sometimes the first sign is not an event, but an inner knowing that something has finally shifted. The road ahead is slowly opening while the emotional walls that once blocked it continue falling apart piece by piece. Keep trusting your inner wisdom. It has quietly guided you through every difficult season, and it continues leading you toward greater clarity. The silence you experienced was not simply emptiness. It became a space where both of you could grow in different ways before seeing the connection with fresh eyes. Everything is unfolding one step at a time. The person who has remained in your thoughts may also be experiencing their own inner transformation, and those changes naturally create ripples that eventually reach beyond them. Stay grounded, stay peaceful, continue honoring your own worth, because that balance protects everything you have worked so hard to build. Your story is still unfolding, and another chapter is already taking shape beneath the surface. While you waited, you also changed. That personal growth has become the key that opens the door to the understanding you have been searching for. Hold on to the calm you have found. Let it become the foundation for whatever comes next. You have earned this season of clarity. As your energy continues turning inward with confidence instead of fear, they are beginning to recognize what your quiet absence truly means. They sense that you are becoming stronger, wiser, and less willing to abandon yourself. That realization brings urgency because they understand time does not wait forever. Many people only recognize the real value of something after living without it long enough to feel its absence. They are now carrying the weight of moments they postponed for too long, remembering every feeling they buried and every decision fear made in place of the heart. For perhaps the first time, they can no longer run from that truth, and that honesty is quietly changing everything. Sometimes time apart does not destroy a connection. Instead, it reveals what was always there beneath the surface. Distance has a unique way of exposing emotional habits that are impossible to ignore forever. It quietly uncovers where fear has been living inside someone, and where another person has been forgetting their own worth while searching for love. It also shows who each person becomes when they have no one else standing beside them. This period of separation changed both of you, but not in the same way. It helped you rediscover your own value without depending on another person's approval. At the same time, it gave them the experience of living without the warmth and steadiness your presence once brought into their life. That is why the feelings you have been noticing lately seem so powerful. Things that remained hidden beneath layers of avoidance are finally rising into the light. They are beginning to understand that what they miss is much deeper than simple attention. They miss your calm energy, your emotional understanding, and the peaceful feeling that naturally existed whenever they were with you. They miss being around someone who understood them without needing endless explanations. That realization has now become too strong to ignore. It is no longer a passing thought or a difficult evening. It has quietly become part of their everyday life. Stay with me, because the next part explains why these feelings often become stronger after the silence lasts longer than anyone expected. Sometimes the heart understands what the mind spends months trying to deny. There are ordinary moments now when memories of you suddenly appear without warning. A familiar song, a certain scent in the air, a simple word spoken by someone else. Even a particular time of day unexpectedly brings your presence back into their thoughts. At first, these moments felt uncomfortable because they wanted to believe they had complete control over what occupied their mind. They hoped they could choose exactly when to remember you and when to move on. But genuine emotions rarely follow strict rules. The deeper the connection, the more naturally it returns on its own. They are now reaching a place where resisting those thoughts takes far more energy than simply accepting them. The emotional walls they once believed protected them have slowly begun feeling more like lonely barriers than safe shelter. The silence they once welcomed has become heavier with every passing day. Instead of creating peace, it has created space for honest reflection. Looking back with clearer eyes, they now remember moments that once seemed ordinary, but carry entirely different meaning today. They remember the patience you showed when they struggled to open up. They remember the understanding you offered during times they could barely understand themselves. Those memories feel different now, because they finally recognize the value that was quietly standing in front of them all along. Keep listening, because the next insight often surprises people who have lived through long periods of emotional distance. Real care often feels ordinary, while it is part of everyday life. Many people only recognize its true value after it is no longer there. That is exactly where they may find themselves today. They are beginning to understand how uncommon your honesty was, how steady your support remained, and how comfortable it felt simply being themselves around you. They searched for pieces of that feeling in different places, hoping something else would create the same sense of peace. Yet every comparison quietly reminded them of what was missing. There were evenings when they convinced themselves they had finally moved forward, only to discover that before the night ended, their thoughts had returned to you once again. If you have been noticing unusual signs lately, or feeling as though life keeps gently reminding you of this person, comment "inner compass" below. Many people describe experiencing this before unexpected emotional changes begin. The harder they tried to disconnect emotionally, the stronger the connection seemed to become. That happens because some bonds are built on something much deeper than excitement or temporary attraction. Somewhere inside, they recognized something genuine in you that cannot simply disappear because they decided it should. Stay until the end, because the final part explains why this realization often changes everything from this point forward. As these quiet realizations continued growing, something also changed in the energy between both of you. Whether they have spoken about it or not, they sense that you are no longer following them emotionally the way you once did.